As a woman and somebody going into the healthcare field, I personally don't, it's on your opinion on abortion. I personally don't think that like I could have an abortion just because morally I feel like for myself it wouldn't be the right choice. But how do you defend your opinion as a white, well-off, religious man? How do you defend your, telling a woman what she can do with her body?
Because evil things are still evil, even if I'm a white, well-off, religious man. And good things are still good, even if I'm a white, well-off, religious man. So this is one of these identity politics points that I really I don't mean to come down harshly on you, I don't, but it is a point that I really have serious moral qualms with. I think it's quite terrible. The reason being that the people who were fighting against enslavement of black people were a bunch of well-off white men for the most part. Right? And those people were saying this is a moral sin. This is a moral blot. They weren't living in the South. They didn't own plantations. They didn't live the lives of the plantation owners. They said this is evil and we are here to stop it. Right? When you see something that you think is morally wrong happening, especially when you're talking about the taking of a human life, like listen, I think that you shouldn't go around randomly killing homeless people. I just have this view. I'm not a homeless person. Most of the people who randomly kill homeless people are probably not of my economic strata, my religious view, or my I don't know whether they're of my skin color or not. I have no idea what the actual sociological breakdown of homeless killer serial murderers is, but I would suggest that my identity has nothing to do with what is right or wrong. And this is what Western civilization used to be about. Western civilization used to be about the idea that, yes, I'm not a woman in the healthcare field, but you and I can have a conversation about what's right and wrong because this is the nature of human reason. The nature of human reason, the nature of right and wrong is that you and I can talk about what's right and wrong and that I don't retreat into my identity. If we can all retreat into our identity and our morality is now centered around that identity, morality doesn't exist at all. We break down into a society of fragmented atoms where I can't even say, like, you're torturing a puppy in your backyard. I have nothing to say about that. I'm not a white woman who's in the healthcare field. I'm not going to do that. I refuse to surrender the idea that I can have a moral stance on issues that are of concern to society and of concern to the well-being of the United States simply because of the color of my skin or the nature of my genitalia. And honestly, I believe any view that feels differently is sexist, racist, and bigoted.
Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. We're taking your calls at 855-236-3228. That's 855-236-3228. Danny in New Jersey, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Danny.
Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Go for it, sir.
Good. Do you mind if I ask another abortion question?
No, go for it. All you, man.
All right. If a parent wants to abort their child, shouldn't they have the right to? So allow me to elaborate. If it is born, there's a possibility that the child won't be nurtured, loved, or treated with the proper care that a parent who desires a child would. Now, every child, especially if they're American, has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but a child that is neglected won't truly inherit these rights. I'm not sure if those on the left make this argument, but it's a question that one of my friends posed, and I didn't really know how to respond to it, but I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, I mean, the basic argument is not a very good one. The reason that it's not a very good one is because I'm a parent, okay? Being a parent is a pain in the ass. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, it can be great, but it is a giant pain in the ass. And very often you're unhappy with your children. Very often you feel incapable of ensuring that your children are getting the best possible upbringing. This is what it's called being a parent. Now, I happen to be in a particularly enviable situation, right? I have the ability for my wife to stay at home. I have a support system. We have a nanny, right? We have all sorts of resources that are available. I'm home a lot. We have a lot of resources available to my kid. Now, imagine that you are a single mom and you are impoverished. You're living on food stamps and you're living below the poverty line. And let's imagine not that you're pregnant with a child. Let's imagine that you had the kid and the kid is a year and a half old, right? You are in the exact same position as the woman who is pregnant, except now the kid has been born. Why shouldn't you be able to kill the kid? I mean, because by the argument is that you're not going to be able to raise the kid in the circumstances proper to the child, guaranteeing them the best possible opportunity. So why is the child's right to life different now that the kid is born than before the kid was born? Because the argument that's being made is not about stage of development, and the argument that's not being made is about bodily autonomy or anything. The argument is about the living circumstances of the child. So if the argument is living circumstances or future living circumstances of the child are insufficient to the needs of the child, therefore you can kill the child, that argument applies equally to kids who are born and kids who are unborn, which leads to the green lighting of infanticide based on circumstance. Again, the key issue with abortion is not the circumstances in which kids grow up, because there are literally billions of kids who are growing up around the planet right now in rather unenviable circumstances, and killing them would be pure murder. The real question about abortion is whether this is a kid or is not a kid, and unless your friends are willing to at least acknowledge that is the question, then this is a secondary question, the living conditions of the kid. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do everything we can to make those living conditions better. It doesn't mean that if you have a kid and you can't take care of it, that you shouldn't give up the kid for adoption. There's a good argument you should. But the tying of social condition to abortion is a particularly egregious moral error.
All right.
Danny, really appreciate the call. All righty, Roger in Colorado, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Roger.
Hey, Ben. My question was, who would you elect as president from the Star Wars universe and why? Rey being the clear choice because she is a woman and therefore she is great at everything and perfect without any training or prior knowledge, but I just wanted to get what your option would be.
Well, I mean, the president who would be the best, presumably, would be the one who respects the boundaries of the constitutional order. The problem is, in the Star Wars universe, nobody really respects the boundaries of the constitutional order, right? I mean, honestly, okay, you ready for the most unpopular answer of all time? Who'd be the best president of the Republic? You ready? Here we go. Jar Jar Binks. Why? Utterly incompetent, incapable of putting together a consensus, can't do anything, has to leave everybody alone. On a non-ridiculous level, Count Dooku makes a pretty solid argument in favor of pushing back against the monopolistic trade federation and in favor of greater local sovereignty. So I think that there is a case for Count Dooku. The separatists don't have a horrible case against the Republic, is the truth, because it's not like they are pushing for overt tyranny. They are pushing against the Republic's inability to operate and also their willingness to cram down, apparently, trade law on local star systems. So there is your ridiculously nerdy answer to a ridiculously nerdy question, Roger. I appreciate the call. Art in Hayward, California, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Art.
Hi, Ben. Big fan of the show. I'm a new subscriber as well. My question is about the homeless crisis.
Yes.
I live in the Bay Area, and I work in Oakland and San Francisco, so I see it every day, and I just wanted to know how you would start to tackle the problem, and is it even possible with the liberals running pretty much all of Northern California?
Well, I mean, the only way that you are possibly going to be able to actually solve homelessness is with both carrot and stick. So what that means is that you have to put people in mandatory drug dry-out. You have to ensure that you have the capacity to forcibly place people in mental health contingency situations where they can't take care of themselves and make sure they take their drugs. And then you have to criminalize loitering. You have to criminalize trespass. I mean, you cannot have people pooping on the streets. You have to arrest them and you have to give them a choice. Either you go to a drug dry-out facility and do what you need to do to get clean, or you go to a mental health facility and you do what you need to do in order to not be living with severe schizophrenia and push back against that, or you can go to jail. And those are the there's no choice where you get to sit on the street and loiter and spread disease and poop on the street and clutter up the street with garbage. That is not an effective choice. You're not allowed to do that. The problem, is not one that the media like to make out. The problem of homelessness is a problem of economic misfortune, and that the vast majority of homeless people just can't afford rent in San Francisco. It's not true. The problem is not rent. The problem is, in the main, drug problems, mental illness problems, and cities that have decided not to criminalize the people who can, create an upward path for themselves and make sure that they can actually get out of living on the streets, which of course is not compassionate to people in the first place.
So, how do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
It's biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society.
Okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man. And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
You said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts. Because this is
Because this is a very, because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl. And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
You can't just say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably gonna be naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
it's not the same as gender. You can't just.
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
You can still legally change it. People recognize.
You can't legally change your age, by the way.
Obviously, you can change your name, you can change your sex, you can change your identity.
Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. You could do lots of things in the past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place. That didn't make it okay. Skinner versus Oklahoma. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
Right. I still don't understand how you're accepting these children that are.
It's not a matter of open-minded and accepting. I want them to get treatment that they see fit, but that's not involving me. The idea behind the transgender movement as a civil rights movement is the idea that all of their problems would just go away if I would pretend that they were the sex to which they claim membership. That's nonsense. The transgender suicide rate is 40%. It is 40%. And according to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference. There's a study that came out last year. It makes no difference, virtually no difference, statistically speaking, as to whether people recognize you as a transgender person or not, which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between transgenderism, whatever that mental state may be, and suicidality. That has nothing to do with how society treats you.
Do you think it could be because of they're bullied at school?
No, I don't think that. I do not think that the discrepancy. I do not think the discrepancy. First of all, I'm against bullying of any sort. Okay, the idea that somebody would beat somebody up is terrible. Okay, as somebody who's viciously bullied in high school, I'm not a fan of bullying. But the idea that the normal suicide rate across the United States is 4%. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 40%. The idea that 36% more transgender people are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous. It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite. It is pure conjecture. In fact, it's not even true that bullying causes suicide, according to a lot of studies. For example, in the black community, where the idea is supposedly that America is a racist society, blacks are bullied a lot. Okay, in the black community has significantly lower suicide rates than in the white community. In fact, in third world countries, the suicide rate is significantly lower than in first world countries. Suicide actually seems to be a privilege of the upper classes if you actually look at it from a financial perspective. So the idea that suicidality is directly a result of people like me saying, no, men are not women and women are not men, it's not true. It's also...
So you think it doesn't impact their identity at all, or their depression, or how they feel about themselves?
I think the idea that you're going to sacrifice the entire society's proper definition of sex because you think that there is in legal terms, somebody with an eggshell skull, meaning that somebody who has a pre-existing condition that makes them more susceptible to criticism, that is not a way to run a society. You can't sacrifice truth because some people are going to actually suffer because of the truth. Plus, there's no evidence whatsoever that the suicide rate would go down in the transgender community in any marked way if people just started pretending that men were women and women were men. We're trying that experiment now. We'll find out whether it works. So far, no evidence.
Have you talked to a group of trans people at all instead of this group of like white people?
I'm more than happy to talk to a group of any people who will have me, but usually they protest me.
Okay, last question about your Planned Parenthood thing. So why do you think it's not about controlling women's bodies and just about the separate life? Like, after the baby is born, how come when people don't care about them? They don't care where they end up in foster care, they don't care about the mother being poor? Like...
Okay, I do care about the mother being poor, I do care about foster care.
Okay, but why don't you advocate for that, though? Because Planned Parenthood is supposed to prevent abortions.
Because, Planned Parenthood doesn't prevent abortions. They perform hundreds of thousands of abortions a year. They perform 300,000 abortions a year. They're the leading abortion mill in the United States.
Evidence for that, though?
That they perform 300,000 abortions a year from Planned Parenthood. That's my evidence. They don't dispute that. No one disputes that.
Like birth control and cancer.
I'm not anti-birth control.
I know.
Birth control is extraordinarily cheap.
That provides affordable birth control, which would in turn...
Okay, they're not the only people in America who provide affordable birth control. You can go get a pack of condoms down at the local CVS for $12.
Condoms rape, people need medication too.
Yes, and it's true that most forms of birth control are also extraordinarily cheap on an annualized basis. Unless you have a severe problem, most birth control is very cheap and readily available. And I'm not against people going and getting that from Planned Parenthood. As you may have noticed, I'm mostly against abortion. If you want to go to Planned Parenthood and get a contraceptive, go for it. I don't care. I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me.
But what about in rape and incest situations?
Okay, so this is so here's the question.
It's different, yes.
I mean, this is a long conversation, and I'm enjoying it actually, which is why I'm allowing you to stay. But the question of rape and incest. First of all, important to note, rape and incest are not only a vast minority of abortion cases, they're an extraordinarily low percentage of abortion cases. So if we can first stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, then we can talk about that other one. Can we do that? Are all the other abortions bad, or are those ones okay? And you're just using this as an excuse to make the other ones okay.
They're all okay.
Ah, good. Someone who's honest. So, who's the honest fellow? Who's okay? Yay, honest people. Good. I like the honesty. Okay, so all abortions are okay. So, a sign that I can't read because it has lots of words on it. Okay, so I have one question for you and one question only on abortion. Does the vagina, the vaginal canal, magically confer personhood? Answer, does the vagina magically confer personhood? Yeah, raised hands are okay. You, sir.
No, the first breath does.
The first breath confers personhood. Okay, so if the baby is in the womb and is exactly the same size and has not yet breathed, and you take a knife and you stab the baby in the head, a fully formed 9-month-old baby, it is not a human. The only thing that makes it a human is when it takes a breath. It has to independently breathe.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to stick to it, yeah, because I'm also pro-capital punishment and pro-selective suicide. So I'm going to stick with it.
Selective suicide? Yeah, I assume you mean elective suicide.
I mean, elective suicide.
Elective suicide. Okay.
Yes, I'm not going to make someone commit suicide.
Right, okay, that's good, because that wouldn't be suicide, that'd be homicide. That, by the way, I'm for capital punishment too, because people who kill people should be killed, but babies who have not killed people should not. And this is my basic position on abortion. So let me but I'll get your answer because you're the one who asked the question. Are you willing to stipulate that all the other abortions are bad? Just rape and incest bother you?
I mean, no, I believe a woman should have the right to
Got it. So it's an excuse, right? So it's an excuse so that we can say that, so that we can take the marginal case and then say that the marginal case applies to all cases. Okay, that's again faulty thinking. But if you want me to answer specifically on rape and incest, here is my basic answer: rapists should be castrated or killed. You shouldn't kill babies. End of story.
But are they ever castrated and killed? Most rapists don't even get convicted.
I agree, and that's usually the left side of the aisle because the left side wants to let them out after 5 years in prison. I want them castrated or killed. I'm telling you what my belief is. My belief is not public policy at the moment. But I think, would you agree with me on that one? Can we at least get a little agreement to finish this particular parlay? Okay, should rapists be castrated or killed?
Well, yes.
Okay, good, yeah, okay, we agree. Thanks.
Welcome back. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. We are taking your calls right here on The Ben Shapiro Show. So now would be a great time for you to call in at 855-236-3228. Alan in New York, you're on The Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Alan.
How you doing, Ben? Longtime fan. I wanted to ask you about abortion. So I think that the left is absolutely disgusting in the way that they celebrate abortion, like what Williams did at the Golden Globes. However, because I come from a medical background, I'm a dental student right now, I think that there should be a cutoff date at which the fetus becomes a viable fetus, where if it were to be preterm, it would be able to survive. I think that should be, that's a good compromise between the left and the right. I just wanted to know your thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's hard to make a compromise on the basis of viability simply because viability is such a vague standard. First of all, it's never been completely defined what viability constitutes. So some people will say viability outside the womb without mom's help. Well, what about the help of machines? What if we develop artificial wombs? What about all the people? I mean, frankly, a baby outside the womb without mom's help will die also, right? I mean, if you've ever had a young child, you know that children without any care will quickly plot if you don't take care of them. Viability is a very difficult moral standard to uphold. Also, scientifically, it's difficult to uphold it. Also, it's difficult to explain why exactly viability should be the standard for whether or not a human life is valuable or not, specifically in a case when waiting for 2 weeks makes the child viable, for example. So the example that I've used is there are a lot of elderly people who are simply not viable, right? They're on machines. They are being kept alive by those machines. could you remove those people from machines if 2 weeks from now they're going to recover? The answer would be no, right? I mean, it doesn't make their life worth any less, the fact that they're non-viable at this point. Beyond that, as far as how this issue should be approached, the issue should be approached, in my view, from politically speaking, not morally speaking, but politically speaking, pro-life people should approach this issue by saying to Democrats, okay, I understand you don't agree that there should be a ban on abortion at week 1. But do you agree that there should be a ban on abortion by week 16? How about week 14? How about week 12? How about week 10? Because the fact is that as you start to draw the line closer and closer to point of conception, you are saving more and more lives, and it's easier to find wiggle room for folks on the left in this without having to force them to confront their base assumptions when you are not starting with the argument from conception, when you start from the argument that is much easier to make, like take a look at this picture of an ultrasound that looks just like a baby. Again, I think viability is a weak argument generally, but anything that prevents future abortions, I'm in favor of. So even incremental legislation, I'd be in favor of, Alan.
Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate the call. Jeremy in Fort Worth, Texas. You're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Jeremy.
Hi, Ben. Just want to say I'm a big fan of your politics. I think you do a great job. My question is a little bit more philosophical. I've seen your discussions with people like Sam Harris in the past. You talked about morality, free will, stuff like that. I've always found them really fascinating, but they always seem to be cut so short. I've heard you defend things like the existence of free will by saying like concepts like responsibility don't make sense unless free will exists. My question for you is, why do you think this is the case? Why can't we be held responsible for our actions if free will doesn't exist?
So I think the answer, Jeremy, is inherent in this in the question that you just asked. You said, how can we be held responsible? Why can't we be held responsible for our actions if free will doesn't exist? And the answer, in my view, is that they're not our actions if free will doesn't exist. Like, what makes an action yours? The fact that you were the body that made the action happen, technically speaking, or the fact that you actually made the decision that made the action happen. So the sort of Baruch Spinoza, the philosopher, his view of the universe is that free will does not exist, that we are effectively stones that have been thrown but have the misimpression that we are moving under the force of our own will. The problem is that once it is society's fault, or once it is the environment's fault, or once it is genetics' fault, everything that you do, why should you be punished on a moral level for your action? Now, you could make a social engineering argument that what is best for society is for people who have a certain biological predisposition toward certain criminal activity to be put in jail. That's not a responsibility argument. That's a social shaping message. But the question of moral responsibility is, why would you be held morally responsible for an action that is not your fault? After all, when somebody is criminally insane, when they don't know the difference between right and wrong, we don't hold them criminally accountable in the same way as somebody who premeditated a murder. If you are a person who is pushed into another person and that person flies in front of a train, right? You're in a train platform, somebody pushes you, you knock a guy in front of a train. We're not going to hold you responsible for murder the same way we would if you're the person who pushed the person in front of the train. So the question of moral responsibility lies in your ability to act otherwise. There are a bunch of different takes on free will. The only two I think that make any sense are the fully determinist position, which is the position Sam Harris takes, and the fully free will position, which is the position that I take. Even the fully free will position does not ignore the impact of environment and genetics. It says that in limited circumstances, you have the ability to choose otherwise. Then there are people who articulate what's called the compatibilist position, which is the idea that while your actions are predetermined, so long as there is nothing that is actively preventing you from doing a thing, if you do it, you have responsibility. I've never found that completely compelling because, again, do you hold animals responsible for their own actions on a moral level? They don't have, something has to distinguish human beings from animals. The traditional philosophers say that is the ability of human beings to reason and use their will. It's difficult to make the argument why humans are different from cows other than in sort of complexity of neural firing if you are a full determinist, Jeremy.
I see. See, the only reason why I ask is because I think there is a way, so you mentioned the compatibilist notion. I think there is definitions of free will and responsibility that do sort of make sense of this. For instance, if you think of responsibility as just holding people accountable for their actions for the sake of changing their future behavior, then that's perfectly consistent with saying, well, we don't have free will, right? We couldn't have done otherwise.
You can make it. That's right. You can make a utilitarian argument along those lines. The problem is that I'm not sure that utilitarian arguments take you all that far, because the truth is that on a utilitarian level, if you want to hold people accountable for their actions in a way that prevents them from committing future bad actions, the easiest way to do that would be to kill shoplifters, right? I mean, and no one is in favor of that on a practical level, because obviously we believe that human beings have an inherent value. So this whole conversation about free will is also tied up with the idea of what makes a human being valuable as opposed to an animal or as opposed to a widget. And that conversation I don't think can be had separate. Jeremy, really appreciate the phone call. Pat in Houston, Texas. You're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Pat.
Hey, Ben, my question is, why shouldn't we draw the line for abortion at capacity for consciousness instead of conception? So like in my view, mirror laws ought to conserve beings with capacity for consciousness, and this consciousness arises from like your limbic system and information processing. So this information processing is heavily tied to sensation. Signs of sensation are about 8 to 12 weeks, so why shouldn't we draw the line there instead of conception?
Well, so the question is, why should capacity for consciousness be the line, right? Now, the burden of proof is on you to show why capacity for consciousness should be the line, particularly because consciousness is more of a sliding scale. I mean, the fact is that, unfortunately, consciousness is not binary. It's not like you're unconscious week 9, and now week 10, you are a fully conscious human being capable of recognizing your surroundings. That obviously is not true. Babies hold consciousness in a different way than older children do, which is why Peter Singer, the philosopher from Princeton, has suggested that infanticide should be okay up to year 3. Right. So the question is, what level of consciousness do you feel is necessary in order to preserve a human life? I think consciousness is kind of a bad argument because, as I've said before, there are times when you are temporarily unconscious, right? I mean, like you are unconscious when you are asleep. This does not deride your value of life. And when you're talking about a baby that is developing in the womb, or a fetus or an embryo developing in the womb, you are talking about temporary unconsciousness because they are in the process of development.
Right. So to push back on that, I think that human beings have a prima facie case for developing capacious consciousness. So once this capacity is instantiated, that is the point in which we deem them as inherently valuable as human beings. So the question of like being unconscious, you still have the capacity for consciousness. That's why we don't kill people that are vegetables, because they still have this neurological capacity for consciousness, which our understanding of neurology hasn't ruled out. So
yeah, but that's a time delay question, Pat, because the fact is that as the baby develops, it has the quote unquote capacity. It depends on your definition. I don't mean to be lawyerly here, but it depends on your definition of capacity. Do you mean that right now, if I woke you up, you would be fully conscious? Because again, vegetables you can't stab in the chest. Those people have less of a possibility very often of growing into consciousness than a normal human embryo, which given, several weeks will in fact grow into consciousness. So I do not.
So I guess the biological framework would be the capacity I'm talking about here. So like the actual neural sensations and the actual neural connections, these are the capacity.
Right. The problem is, again, so like, you do end up in sort of a eugenic moral box here, in the sense that there are a lot of people who are adults who have limited capacities for consciousness, and we presumably don't want to kill them. So if you're talking about a general human capacity for consciousness, that would extend to people where if you time delay for 3 weeks, they do like the actual capacity for consciousness. The argument I'm making is the capacity for consciousness is instantiated not when the brain is developed to the point where you are conscious to a certain very, very baseline level at week 9 in the womb. It is instantiated at conception because, again, you will be a fully conscious creature given an appropriate period of time as long as you're not killed. Pat, I really appreciate the call. We'll get to more of your calls in just 1 second at 855-236-3228. First, let's talk about something that you can do for your family, for yourself, that really is important and really is fantastic, and that is preserving your memories. Okay, so I know that out in your garage you have a bunch of old films from Grandma, and you haven't watched them. She hasn't watched them. Nobody's seen them for 40 years because who the hell has a machine capable of playing back film reels and projecting them on the wall these days? You need everything in a digital file. You need everything in a digital format. Here's where Legacy Box comes in. So I just gave my parents a Legacy Box so that they can put all of their old film reels in there, send it off to Legacy Box, have all the labels shipped with them, right? So they can keep track of all their materials. Legacy Box then takes all those materials, puts it on a thumb drive, puts it in a DVD or a convenient digital download, and then sends you back all your original material. So now it's all accessible and it's easy to get to and you can watch it. It is fantastic. Go check out Legacy Box right now. I know the people who founded Legacy Box, not only are they trustworthy, they are really entrepreneurial. Helping out their company, I think, is a great thing to do. And obviously, the product is great or I wouldn't be talking about it. Get started preserving your past today. Go to legacybox.com/radio to get 40% off your first order right now. Save your time and your memories. Go to legacybox.com/radio and save 40%. Again, legacybox.com/radio and get 40% off your first order. We're taking your calls at 855-236-3228. Keith in La Crescenta, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Keith.
Hi, Ben. Longtime fan of the show. Keep doing God's work, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
As one of the only other White Sox fans in L.A., and since today is Jose Abreu's birthday, and by the way, somebody else's birthday is tomorrow as well, I just wanted to ask you, Who do you think is the best prospect in their system, and how optimistic are you about the team's future? Thanks.
So I'm very optimistic about the White Sox future. I know this is a very sectional question, and very few people care about the White Sox, but I do, so deal with it. Okay, so the White Sox future is great. They have a fantastic group of prospects that are coming up. Michael Kopech is coming back from Tommy John surgery. Got Luis Robert in center field. At some point, Nick Madrigal, who's their second baseman, will come up. They just signed a bunch of free agents, including Dallas Keuchel, as well as Gio Gonzalez. The Sox are going to be competitive this year. They'll compete for the AL wild card, if not for the Central Division title itself. And the next few years look really good. They have a very young, very talented team. Keith, thanks for the White Sox question. Always puts me in a good mood, at least when they don't stink. Zach in Indiana, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Zach.
Hi, Ben. I just want to say that I agree with you on most things that you say, but whenever I bring up your arguments on racism or white privilege to friends of opposing views, they say what you say is bullshit, and that you can't speak on the subject because you're not black and don't understand their daily struggles in society, and that you blatantly ignore obvious cases of racially motivated acts against black people, like with Khalif Browder or Trayvon Martin. So what would your response be to that?
So you have to take each individual circumstance under the conditions in which it was committed. So I will admit that I don't know the first name that you refer to there, so I will have to look up that case. The Trayvon Martin case is a particular case where the Justice Department under Barack Obama found there was no racial motivation to that particular killing. I mean, the entire killing was dismissed by a jury because the case was that Trayvon Martin at the time of the shooting was sitting atop George Zimmerman and banging his head into the ground, according to witness testimony and forensic evidence. So that is not a great case of racism. If you want to talk about a great case of racism, then you would talk about the case of Walter Scott up in South Carolina, which I have talked about extensively, right? A case where a cop shot a black man in the back and then planted a gun on him. That guy went to jail for life. He should have gone to jail for life. When there are cases of actual racism, we're all on the same side here. My general statement is that there is no such thing as quote unquote institutional racism, that institutions are not racist, that if you are looking at individuals who are being racist, or if you can spot an institution that is acting in a racist fashion, we will all be on the same side. What I don't like is the generalized argument that America is institutionally racist or systemically racist when your only evidence of quote unquote institutional or systemic racism is that there is disproportionate impact of a law on a particular population without looking into the actual activities within population. So, for example, when people say the criminal justice system is racist because a disproportionate number of black people are in jail, that does not take into account differential crime rates among populations, right? If you can show me that a disproportionate number of black people as compared to crime rates are in jail, then we can talk about where the racism lies in the system. But if you are just saying that a disproportionate number of black people are in jail for homicide, when unfortunately a disproportionate number of homicides are committed by black people, that is not evidence of systemic racism inside the system. So in other words, we should all be looking at instances of racism to fight. But when people blame all inequality on inequity, when they blame all disproportion on some sort of vague racism that they can't define, they just sort of spit out a phrase like white privilege or institutional racism without explaining exactly what in the policy is racist or who are the racists who implemented the policy. I've said before, I think that's ghost hunting, and I think that is not designed to actually come up with a solution. I think it's actually designed to forestall a solution that we can all agree on, because again, if you show me a racist incident, then I'm happy to not only label it racist, but say that the person should be punished to the full extent of the law, Zach.
Hey, Ben, so I wanted to ask you a question. You said earlier that a lot of Democrats are uncomfortable looking at pictures of children that are being aborted. Yeah, I would say that you and many other Republicans would feel equally uncomfortable looking at pictures of Sandy Hook victims who were shot. How can you honestly stand up here and say that you support abortion, you support government intervention, you support government intervention to make abortion illegal, which is designed to kill someone, and yet you can stand up here and say you don't want government intervention for guns, which are also designed to kill people?
Because guns are not designed to kill children. Guns are designed to kill bad guys if operated by a proper person. There's not an abortion in the world that doesn't end with the death of a baby. Honestly, the reason. I have no problem with looking at the pictures of gun violence victims, other than the problems any other human being, left or right, would have with looking at those pictures, which is that they're horrific and deeply disturbing and very upsetting. But I don't feel any sense of guilt or avoidance. Like, I can't look at this picture because I bear some sort of responsibility for this. It is impossible not to look at a picture of an aborted baby and say this was disconnected from the act that I approve, because the act is the killing of the baby. There's no policy that I approve of that ends with the murder of children. Okay, there is a policy that is designed for the murder of children, which is what abortion is. Yeah, that's fine. You can have a quick follow-up. That's fine. Sorry.
Okay, so but if all people, right? You said that once the cells come together, you said those are considered people, which I can understand. I can get
No, I
behind
said that's
that.
considered a human life.
A human life, right?
Yes.
Why is this human life being killed and another human life being killed by gun violence? Why is that any different?
Again, it's not a matter of the value of the human life being different. It's equally as evil and tragic and horrific and disgusting when people kill fully formed children who are outside the womb. My point is that the act that connects to the killing of the children is not connected to my position on guns. The act that connects to the killing of unborn babies is connected to the legalization of abortion. The reason that I want people to be able to exercise their Second Amendment rights is to shoot pieces of like the people who go into schools and shoot up children. Right? I have 2 kids. They both go to a Jewish school, which means they are on the target list for somebody out there. Right? Jewish schools are disproportionately targeted, unfortunately, in the United States. I went to a Jewish school when I was in high school. There were bomb threats legitimately every couple of months. In 1999, there was a white supremacist who drove by our Jewish day school, saw an armed guard outside, proceeded to drive away, went to the West Valley JCC, and shot up the West Valley JCC. The reason that I'm in favor of gun rights is because I want that armed guard outside carrying the gun to dissuade people from going inside the school and shooting the kid. I'm not in favor of...
I just have a quick question about abortion. I was wondering, the way you're describing it sounds like killing of babies, whether unborn or born, sounds like a first-degree murder case. I just want to make sure I'm getting that right. Punishment for first-degree murder is life imprisonment without parole. I was wondering if you think people who commit abortions should be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
And doctors, specifically? I mean,
doctors or mothers.
Okay, so the position of the pro-life movement has been for decades that mothers should not be punished for abortion, that women are, at least in part, as much a victim of the abortion as the child. And that springs largely from ignorance about what exactly is being killed. Very few women are actively saying, sure, it's a baby in my womb, take it out. Most of them are saying it's a ball of tissue, it's nothing, it doesn't mean anything. I've been told by Planned Parenthood that it means nothing, so go ahead and perform this polyp surgery. And so that's acting out of ignorance. It lacks the mens rea, and sort of legal terminology that would be necessary in order to establish something like a first-degree murder charge. The same thing does not hold true for Kermit Gosnell. The same thing does not hold true for abortion doctors who are fully aware that a 20-week-old baby is in fact a baby, and who are aware that an incipient human life is in fact an incipient human life. Now, when it comes to gradations of punishment based on the term of the abortion, it's an argument that honestly I haven't considered very much, to be frank with you. Like, I haven't actually sat down and thought about what a criminal code would look like. Is it the same punishment for aborting at 2 weeks as it would be for aborting at 30 weeks? I think, first of all, it'd be difficult to establish any sort of public support for a law quite like that. My main issue is not about the punishment so much as it is about the disincentive to the performance of the abortion itself. I'm more interested in preserving the lives as opposed to punishing the people who are taking them. The only reason to punish is to preserve the lives and provide a disincentive. So whatever disincentive was necessary in order to prevent the murder of the unborn, I'm very much in favor of.
Okay, so you said whatever disincentive is necessary. Is there a limit onto what lengths you would go if you were imposing policy to prevent abortion or like?
Yeah, I mean, I said I don't think that a punishment is appropriate for the mother. I think when it comes to abortion doctors who are making their living by killing presumably thousands of unborn children, there are very few lengths to which I think that I would not go in terms of government policy in punishing those doctors and giving them jail time.
Okay. Thank you, Ben.
My question is about abortion. So usually when I talk about that with other, folks, either the approach is from a religious standpoint or trying to apply science to it. So, but never seen like a kind of like a, happy medium between the two. So are you optimistic that there's gonna be, I don't know, a resolution to that issue, to that approach, maybe from a religious perspective, also with some science in it?
So I think that the possibility of a resolution is going to be more incremental than anything else, and it's happening in real time, right? You can see the American people's opinions on abortion have shifted pretty markedly toward the pro-life position. Now, to get all the way to the full pro-life position that I hold, which essentially is that from conception, this is when life begins, it's going to take more work, it's going to take more education, and it's going to take a ground shift in the way that Americans tend to think about these issues. But as people see with more clarity into the womb itself, as people see the biology more clearly, they're beginning to become less and less warm toward toward abortion. Like the actual number of abortions in the United States has dropped now to its lowest levels since actually Roe v. Wade, and that is in large part due. That's in large part due to the educational efforts of a wide variety of groups. It's due to 4D ultrasounds. It's due to the ability to see more of the human biology. And as people understand that biology better, they're going to be more pro-life.